Hey everybody, we're talking about The Light in the Wilderness Part 2 today. Kind of setting up our concert coming up on April 5th featuring the Brubeck brothers. The Brubecks play Brubeck Quartet coming up on April 5th here at Southern Nazarene University, or actually across the street at Bethany First Church, featuring our whole cast of characters. So, we talked about movement 1, or the first part of in the last video. In this one, we're talking about the second part, and it shifts pretty abruptly from the intensity and seriousness into an interlude, actually between part 1 and part 2, called a fantasia on Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled. So it's more like an entr'acte to a Broadway musical than it is anything else. I mean, it jumps right in. It feels very kind of 20th century Broadway musical-esque, using the theme from the later movement, Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled. The actual body of part 2 sets up a shift in kind of the focus of the text. Whereas the first part was more narrative, the second part is more contemplative, raising questions of faith and reflecting on man's place in the universe. From Matthew 16:26, "For what does it profit a man if he gain the whole world, yet he lose his own soul?" That kind of scriptural reference is kind of what defines this second part, which is actually quite a bit shorter than the first part. So as we move into that contemplation, and there's some really beautiful meditative improvisations that happen here in the very first chunk of this, we finally settle on Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled. This was actually the very first movement or piece that was written by Dave Brubeck before any of the other material was written. And he really wrote it as a way to honor and support his brother Howard, who lost his son. And so this text actually comes from the book of Psalms, "Let not your heart be troubled, ye believe in God." And so as he moves into this, it starts, you can hear it. The sopranos start, actually the baritone kind of sets it up in the previous section, and then the sopranos start. And it says in the score, childlike. And then we add voices, and eventually all of the voices of the chorus are singing that text, "Let not your heart be troubled, ye believe in God." As we move on through, and it builds and builds, and then again we have that really abrupt left turn into a jazz swing tune, coming out of kind of a 6/8, 9/8 feel right into this jazz swing feel. So after Let Not Your Heart Be Troubled, we move into the movement that uses the text from John 12. "Yet a little while is the light with you. Walk while you have the light, lest darkness come upon you. For he that walketh in darkness knoweth not whither he goeth." That movement bringing us back, and Jesus telling, preaching to us here a little bit. Then we go to the last movement, the movement being called Praise Ye the Lord. So, Brubeck writes this and says, "I have chosen to close with the psalm because, like the ancient psalmist, my religious faith is rooted in awe at the infinitude of creation." So this kind of universal inclusiveness and awe-inspiring wonder that Brubeck felt is really at the heart of the whole piece, but also definitely in the heart of this last movement. So as you can see, as we move through, taking little excerpts from several of these movements of this incredible work, there's a real grab bag of compositional techniques from kind of the Broadway musical idea, the 12-tone, really angular serialism that you get from composers like Schoenberg, and then the polychordal, polytonality and polyrhythmic stuff that's very evident in most of his jazz playing and jazz style. And then, some really beautiful melodic moments that just kind of sit over a really basic ostinato pattern that's then meditated on by some improvised piano. So it's a really exciting kind of dynamic work that'll take us on quite a journey. I'm excited to work on it with you. Hopefully we'll see you on April the 5th.